Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the first trailer for Spider-Man Noir. For the record, black and white is the best way to watch this show, but let me know how you're going to watch it, and maybe that's how we'll make our breakdowns of the series. Now, this show is a live-action version of the character that Nicolas Cage played in Spider-Verse.
In my universe, it's 1933, and I'm a private eye. I like to drink egg creams, and I like to fight Nazis.
Now, Cage is a huge comics fan who reportedly still gets new issues from the shop every Wednesday. He's always enthusiastic about comic book roles. He was almost Superman, and he gave us glorious memes as Johnny Blaze in the Ghost Rider franchise. But this is a very different role for him, and a new take on Spider-Man that we've not really seen before, at least not in movies or shows. This is produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who also directed the Spider-Verse films, but I don't think this is like the exact same character. He is a variant of the animated version. Now, the character first appeared in 2009 as part of the Marvel Noir Comics line. His origin is that Peter Parker was a young activist in the 1930s who was investigating the murder of his Uncle Ben by the crime lord Norman Osborn. In one of Osborn's warehouses, Peter is bit by an African spider, which leads him to create a cocoon and emerge with powers and organic web fluid. Now remember, this is the 1930s before radioactivity, so Peter had to get his powers from magical means. He's also much darker than our version of Peter Parker. He uses guns and he kills people. Now, Cage's character is not named Peter Parker, maybe because of legal issues. Instead, he's named Ben Reilly. Now, this is the name of Spider-Man's clone in the comics who briefly became the new Spider-Man. And guys, that's as far as I'm going to explain the clone storyline. It gets really messy. So like all of this, the darker tone and the anti-hero lean into the film noir aesthetic of this show. Or what's noir mean? Well, it's French for dark. It's a film genre from the 1930s and 40s that's epitomized by shady characters, anti-heroes, shadows, and murky morality. There was a neo-noir revival in the 1970s through films like Chinatown, but Phil Lord and Chris Miller described Reilly as older and jaded and not afraid to get drunk and punch a guy in the face. But they also said that he has already had his jaded Chinatown moment. Remember, that film ends famously with Detective Jay Gittes learning that he can't change the world and it's pointless to try to help anyone.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
So here we have a Spider-Man who lacks clear morality, played by Nicolas Cage in black and white. I am very excited for this show, and co-showrunner Oren Uziel has said that Cage's performance is 70% Humphrey Bogart and 30% Bugs Bunny. And we see that in this trailer. Bogart is the face of film noir, starring in classics like The Maltese Falcon, and Cage has like that really dark, shadowed edge. But then, he's also still living cartoon character Nicolas Cage.
And then I got plastered.
Alright, so that's all the breakdown. Let's break down this trailer. We open with Reilly in a mausoleum, literally surrounded by death. His face is half in shadow and half lit, reflecting his double identity, and also how Spider-Man is sometimes drawn with half of his mask in the comics. And then we get a few action shots. We see a close-up of this simple mask, but notice that it still has the webbing stitched in so it resembles the classic mask, except it's just black on black. Then we see his organic web shooting. He stops a car and he web slings before striking a classic Spider-Man pose. Now here in this scene, he's talking to Cat Hardy, a lounge singer, and this universe's take on the Black Cat. And by the way, how in the hell have we had 10 Spider-Man movies before the Black Cat appears? I mean, Felicia technically cameoed in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but Black Cat is a key character in Spider-Man comics who frankly deserves to be a major character in a film. And then we get this great shot of Cage's reflection, again, only seen half his face, to show his hidden identity. The next shot is Ben Reilly in World War I, and this is a major change from the comics that adds many layers of subtext to the character and his trauma. This is a great addition to the canon.
Well, you know, that's a really good point. I'm something of a scholar myself, right?
Oh my god, Doug, look what I found!
Is it pancakes?
No, it's my very first VHS tape, Superman 4. And look, a lot of you guys know this one. This is the original ScreenCrush shirt. And oh my god, this takes me back. This is my very last overdraft fee from the bank. Dude, I was drowning in debt. I had car loans, student loans, credit card debt. I could not even keep my bank account in the black.
Well, then let's sell everything and change our names.
No, I used to be in debt, but then I got a plan that helped me claw my way out. And I know a lot of you are also feeling buried by your debt. Loans, medical bills, credit cards. It's crazy how fast all of this can overwhelm you. Luckily, PDS Debt has a customizable option to get you out of debt. See, PDS Debt understands your specific scenario, and they can help provide an alternative solution to you becoming debt-free. As As somebody who has personally struggled with a lot of debt, I am proud to have PDS Debt as the sponsor of this video. There is no minimum credit score, and they'll help you to pay off your debt faster and put money back in your own pocket where it belongs. PDS Debt is rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau, and they have helped hundreds of thousands of people like you get out of debt. Every month you wait, you're just accruing more interest and fees, so act now. You're 30 seconds away from being debt-free, so you can change your story now. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you at pdsdebt.com/ScreenCrush. That's pdsdebt.com/ScreenCrush, or click the link below. Now back to what I was saying. So we know this is World War I from the shadows of the helmets outside. World War I was truly a nightmare. It was literally hell on earth. It maimed and traumatized a generation of people in the United States, Europe, and around the world. So it would make sense that Riley would be haunted by this war when it's 20 years later. So the trailer uses a lot of cuts and features these hallucinogenic sequences from Cage's point of view. Now, this could be their take on the mystical origin from the comics and making it feel like it's possession or psychosis. We see broken glass and a reflection toward the end of the trailer. Nick Cage has said that he sees this as a spider cosplaying as a human, so that supports this idea of him having a kind of split personality. Maybe there is a spider identity living inside of Riley's mind, which symbolizes the experience and the trauma of World War I. So then this tunnel blurs and warps, and maybe this is him manifesting his powers for the first time and adjusting to his new senses. Now there's no confirmation here, but I'm betting that the woman in this window is conducting experiments on soldiers. And then we get an origin clue. A jar in the foreground with a huge scary spider inside hooked up to some kind of Victorian era Frankenstein-like experiment. Now because Cage is in uniform, this is probably leading up to how he got his powers. I love this overhead alley shot. It looks like a panel straight out of a Sin City comic book. The shadows and tilted angles are reminiscent of German Expressionism. This is a film genre that's known for these dark shadows and angular lines. This movement ended with World War I, but it inspired film noir filmmakers of the 1930s. Now, as Riley looks out of his office window, classic noir trope, he says,
I manage to suppress them most of the time.
So we have a Spider-Man who is actively trying to hold back this crawling evil inside of his brain. He is talking to Lamorne Morris, Winston from The New Girl, who is playing Robbie Robertson. Now in the comics, Robbie is the managing editor of the Daily Bugle, and he was played by Radio Raheem in the Raimi Spider-Man movies. He's traditionally always been really easy on Peter Parker and kind of suspects that he's Spider-Man. But in the show, he is a younger, idealistic journalist who is trying to make his mark on the world. He and Riley are friends, which creates a contrast. Riley is the cynic, and Robbie is the optimist. As Ben has one of his episodes, we see various shots. A shadowed figure with a gun, an eye and a keyhole, representing how there's a mystery here and we're not seeing the whole truth, and then a flash of rain on a sunny day. Now this actor is Jack Huston, who many of you might know as Richard from Boardwalk Empire. Jack is actually the grandson of the legendary director-actor John Huston.
He was also the voice of Gandalf.
Yes, he was. And he was also the villain in the neo-noir Chinatown. Now in this show, Jack plays Flint Marko, aka the Sandman. Now in the Spider-Man noir comics, Peter is the only person with powers, but it looks like we're going to see his rogues gallery get powers in their series. Kind of similar to how we've slowly seen the origins of Batman's villains in the amazing comic book Absolute Batman. And then we see a portrait of Brendan Gleeson as the villain of the series, the crime boss Silvermane. There are flashes of Cage crying, a surgeon maybe looming over Ben during the war. In fact, this could be how he gets his powers. An experimental procedure involving spiders to save his life from a battle injury. And then we see a World War I era dog tag on a toe for James Addison. This could be Riley's friend from the war who died, and maybe his death is the trauma that Cage is still dealing with in the series. Then we see that cracked glass with Silvermane laughing, again hinting at Riley's fractured identity, and then this creepy ass flash of a man spider mid-transformation. Now, I think this could be a vision that Riley has during his metamorphosis. Notice we see that it's growing multiple eyes and a spider leg to his left right here. Although I've seen some speculation that this could actually be the Vulture. Now the woman talking to Riley here is his secretary Janet, played by Karen Rodriguez. In film noir, the secretary is like the only stable woman in the detective's life. She typically performs a kind of motherly role, making sure that the detective's basic needs are met. Now he knows that he can trust her, but this also means that he will never have a romantic interest in her in order to keep her safe. Actually a very sexist trope, but guys, we're talking about the 1930s here.
I beat up some guys in a bar.
And this is a pretty typical vigilante scene. There's parallels here with Frank Miller's Daredevil and the Watchmen's Rorschach, both of whom always visited dive bars to get information from local hoods. But unlike those heroes, the spider lifts up his mask has to get drunk when he clears the place out. And if you want to see the Bugs Bunny aspect of Cage's performance, it's right here. I hope he spends half the show in a mask and drunk off his ass. And then we get a classic Spider-Man falling shot. Now this is similar to the inverted shot of Miles Morales falling up in the Spider-Verse films, but in those cases he was ascending into the role of Spider-Man. But here, the Spider is plummeting down into his own personal hell. Now I think the man screaming here could be Lucas Haas, a man who works for Silvermane. Later we see him on fire. He could be the villain, the Molten Man, who's been a foe of Spider-Man's since the Stan Lee days, but he's never appeared in the movies. Then a newspaper crushes a spider, and this could be Brendan Gleeson upset that the spider is hurting his operations. And then we see the tagline, which is, "With no power comes no responsibility." But this isn't saying that the spider has no powers. I think the implication is that this version of the character has no power in this society. He is a drunk, he is an outcast, and a lowlife. But Brendan Gleeson's Silvermane, the villain, is a wealthy, connected mob boss who controls the city's political infrastructure. Riley is then taking a photo, which is of course a nod to Peter Parker's day job as a photographer, but it's also the main job of a private eye, to take pictures of husbands who are having affairs. And then we see a POV shot, probably from Riley on the operating table when he's about to experience his origin moment. Then he rises from a hospital bed and makes this pose like a spider. In fact, this pose and shadows are also similar to the creature in Nosferatu, leaning into the German expressionism influence that we're seeing in this show. And also the idea that Riley's trauma and the experiment are making him transform into a new kind of monster, the spider. And then we see Riley watching Cat singing, followed by Robbie trying to take a photo, but then probably watching the powers of the Sandman or Molten Man manifest as he gets a little freaked out. Then we see this badass shot of who I think is the Molten Man ripping open this door. Maybe he's a former henchman of Silvermane's who got his powers in an accident, and so he's raiding his warehouse. See, Molten Man does become a reformed hero in the comics, so he could eventually work with the spider in this series. We also get a great look at the spider suit here when it's tucked into a briefcase. This actually looks like part of a uniform that Riley could have worn in the military. This would mean that when he suits up as the spider, he's always taking the war with him. And if you need proof to watch this show in black and white instead of color, look at the contrast between these shots of Janet. The color version is oversaturated. It looks too pristine and too digital. But in black and white, the shadows are able to communicate the mood of this shot. And then Riley says,
Bit of an existential crisis, if I'm honest.
And not for nothing, but existentialism really took hold of literature and art following World War I. Movements like Dadaism and novels like All Quiet on the Western Front implied that Western civilization was meaningless in the face of so much death and carnage. Now this shot of Spider on the roof is also so reminiscent of Rorschach and the Watchmen that I think it has to be an homage. There are also action shots of Riley chasing down somebody and Marco throwing a punch while he's covered in sand, confirming that he does turn into the Sandman. And then we see a shot of the spider floating up in the water, followed by Riley falling down off a roof. And this is showing their dual personalities. And this image of Cat falling could be moments before he saves his life or before he doesn't. And it could also just be Riley imagining her dying. After all, we're seeing that he's a little psychotic and probably sees things that aren't there. And then this drunken POV shot of Silvermane almost looks like we're seeing it through a kaleidoscope, sort of like we're seeing it through the point of view of somebody who has 8 eyes, like a spider. Then there's a few flashes, a blank police report, Cat pounding the piano, Electro's hand, somebody plunking down some Benjamins, Cage's eyeball, and finally the spider showing off his real superpower, keeping his hat on while web slinging. Guys, this show looks amazing. We cannot wait to cover this for you, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or you can find me on Substack and subscribe to me there, or find me on our free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, do me a favor, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.